Folks, something incredible has happened. Teacher, is this really an airport? It looks just like heaven. This was the very first exclamation from Mr. Som Piseth, a 78-year-old retired schoolteacher from a rural village in Siem Reap, Cambodia. The moment he stepped inside the terminal at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. 12 retired teachers who survived the hell of the Pol Pot era and continued to educate their village grandchildren on a meager income of less than $300 a month, found themselves stepping onto American soil due to an unexpected twist of fate during their first-ever trip abroad. Did you know that these rural Cambodian educators, who lost family members in the Civil War and saw their schools burned to the ground, yet never gave up on teaching children to read, said this after spending just 48 hours in the United States? God guided us to America. We must bring the richness we witnessed here back to the children of our village. These words from 75-year-old former principal Mr. Chia Sopik shook the Cambodian Ministry of Education and sparked a sensation in local media. What exactly did they see in the U.S.? This is a miraculous 48-hour story that touched the souls of village teachers who live on humble means. We will tell this story through the testimony of Jimmy Chun, a local interpreter who accompanied them throughout the journey. Before we begin, if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, it would be a huge motivation for us to share more inspiring stories from across America. Hello everyone, I am Jimmy, and I have been teaching English in Siem Reap, Cambodia, for 8 years. Main story: last October, I experienced the most moving event of my life. It happened when 12 of the village's most respected retired teachers visited the United States for the first time. The story begins 3 years ago. Somnang, the grandson of Mr. Som Piseth, who has taught in the rural village of Prazit on the outskirts of Siem Reap for 50 years, was getting married in Toronto, Canada. Somnang was raised by Mr. Piseth. He graduated from a Canadian university on a scholarship and found a job there. Mr. Piseth said, "I am 78 years old. I may not have much time left. My only wish is to see my grandson's wedding with my own eyes." The villagers were deeply moved and started fundraising for him. However, the flight to Canada cost over $3,000, an astronomical figure for a retired teacher whose monthly pension is barely $300. That's when his fellow retired teachers stepped up. It would be lonely for Mr. Piseth to go alone. "We will go with him." Former principal Mr. Chia Sopik, 75, Mrs. Chandara, 70, Mr. Sofal, 69, and others, 12 of the village's most respected elders, decided to use their life savings to embark on their first overseas trip. I was invited to accompany them as their interpreter. For these elderly teachers who had never stepped foot outside rural Cambodia, flying directly to Canada seemed too grueling. I thought it would be better to have a layover to let them slowly adjust to the outside world. However, due to budget constraints, they chose a route with a connection in Thailand before heading to Canada. On October 15, 2023, they departed from Phnom Penh Airport. They were scheduled to transfer at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok. It was the teachers' first time on a plane, and they were incredibly nervous. Mr. Piseth said, "Even if I die in the sky, as long as I can see my grandson, I will be satisfied." The flight to Bangkok went smoothly. Mrs. Chandara looked at the clouds outside the window and shed tears, saying, "I've been a teacher for 50 years. I never thought the day would come when I could look down on the earth from above the clouds." However, upon arrival at Bangkok Airport, the situation took a drastic turn. An emergency announcement blared through the terminal. Political unrest had broken out in Thailand, and the military had staged a coup. All international flights were grounded, and the airport was on lockdown. We were stranded. The teachers were visibly shaken. Mr. Sofal asked with a trembling voice, "Is war starting again?" The traumatic memories of the Pol Pot era seemed to resurface in their minds. We consulted with airport staff, who told us the safest and most certain way to get out was to reroute through the United States to get to Canada. Until then, the teachers only had a vague impression of America, an economic superpower, wealthy, but perhaps a bit intimidating and distant. With no other choice, we boarded an emergency flight bound for Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. On the plane, Mr. Piseth asked me, Jimmy, will we be okay? Will the Americans accept us? Honestly, I was anxious too. Not only was there a language barrier, but the long-haul flight was physically exhausting for the elderly teachers. We arrived at LAX at 11 p.m. The moment the cabin door opened, the teachers' expressions turned to pure astonishment. First, they were struck by the sheer brightness and cleanliness of the jet bridge. It was a level of infrastructure incomparable to airports in Cambodia. As soon as we entered the Tom Bradley International Terminal, Mr. Piseth let out that first gasp. Teacher, is this really an airport? It looks just like heaven. The floors were polished to a shine, the ceilings were soaring, and the vast glass windows revealed a glittering night view. It was a completely different dimension from the aging facilities they were used to. On the way to immigration, the first touching incident occurred. An airport staff member noticed the elderly travelers walking slowly. Without us even asking, they immediately brought over wheelchairs. This was their first encounter with the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, in action. 78-year-old Mr. Piseth and 76-year-old Mrs. Moni Sarath used the wheelchairs. At immigration, something even more surprising happened. When the CBP, Customs and Border Protection, officers understood our situation, they didn't just process us, they treated us with humanity. They managed to find an officer who had done humanitarian work in Southeast Asia. 15 minutes later, an American officer approached and spoke to them in broken but warm Khmer. The teacher's eyes went wide. You are American, but you speak Khmer? The officer smiled and welcomed them. Despite the emergency entry, the process was incredibly smooth. The staff assisted us with everything from filling out forms to arranging accommodation. In Cambodia, government paperwork can take a whole day, but here, everything was sorted in 30 minutes. Most moving was the accommodation arrangement. Considering the teacher's advanced age, the airline arranged a hotel near the airport and provided a specialized shuttle bus with a wheelchair lift. Mrs. Chandara wiped away tears and asked, "We are not important people. Why are they being so kind to us?" It was past 1 a.m. when we arrived at the hotel. Yet, the front desk staff welcomed us with bright smiles and that famous American hospitality. They thoughtfully assigned ground floor rooms for easy access. On the way to the rooms, Mr. Piseth stopped. He was shocked by the cleanliness of the corridor, not a speck of dust on the carpet. He asked, "Jimmy, is this building brand new?" In reality, it was a 20-year-old hotel, but due to impeccable maintenance, it looked new. In Cambodia, buildings often show wear within a few years. Inside the room, there were more surprises. The bathroom featured endless hot water, fluffy towels, and a coffee maker. Mr. Soffel was moved, saying, "There are such convenient things. This is a country that takes care of your comfort down to the smallest detail." The next morning, at the hotel breakfast buffet, the teachers were even more surprised. The spread included everything from eggs and bacon to fresh fruit and yogurt, but what impressed them most was the staff's attitude. A server noticed the teachers hesitating with heavy plates and immediately rushed over to carry them to the table. Mr. Chia Sapik said to me while eating, "Jimmy, we Cambodians believe respecting elders is our culture, but Americans show it through action. They don't just say it, they build their world to value people." After breakfast, we decided to take a trip into the city using a rideshare service and the metro. While waiting for the train, they marveled at how Americans stood in orderly lines. In Cambodia, when a bus arrives, it's usually a chaotic scramble to get on. When the train arrived, an even more surprising scene unfolded. Everyone waited for passengers to exit before stepping on. This logic, seemingly obvious here, was eye-opening for the teachers. Mr. Piseth noted, "It is so disciplined, like an army. But strangely, no one is shouting orders." Inside the metro car, the emotions continued. The seats were cushioned, and the ride was quiet. Mrs. Moni Sarath looked out the window at the sprawling Los Angeles landscape, the organized grid of the streets, and the manicured lawns of the suburbs. She said, "The neighborhoods are so organized. It is completely different from our village." When we arrived at Union Station, its grand scale shocked them. Mrs. Chandara said, "A station this big? It looks like a palace." Indeed, the historic station was magnificent, yet the signage was so clear we never got lost. While transferring, we had an incident at the escalator. A young American man saw me pushing Mr. Piseth's wheelchair. He naturally paused, held the door, and waited at the bottom of the escalator to ensure we exited safely. We hadn't asked for help. He just did it. Inside the train, we saw more acts of kindness. As soon as the elderly teachers boarded, several young people stood up to offer their seats, not reluctantly, but with genuine smiles. Mr. Soffel sat down and whispered, "In our country, people talk about respect, but on the bus, you rarely see this. The American youth lead with their hearts." When we emerged in the city, the teachers were speechless. Beyond the skyscrapers, they were amazed that the city was as bright as day, even at night. Mr. Piseth asked, "Why is it so bright? Is there a festival?" It was just a regular weeknight, but the streetlights and neon signs illuminated everything. Checking into our next hotel downtown, the front desk staff's attitude moved them again. Recognizing they were elderly tourists, the staff placed them in rooms near the elevator and told us, "If you need anything at all, just dial 0. Mr. Chia Sapik's eyes grew misty. They care for us like family. What a kind country. The next morning, something unexpected happened. 76-year-old Mrs. Moni Sarath suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed during breakfast. We knew she had a history of heart issues, and the fatigue of travel had triggered it. The hotel staff immediately called 911. What happened next was astonishing. The ambulance arrived in just 4 minutes. In rural Cambodia, waiting over an hour for help is common. The ambulance was equipped with advanced medical technology, monitoring her condition in real time. The paramedics were incredible, professional, calm, and swift. One of them explained the situation in simple English and insisted I ride along to translate. Upon arriving at a major medical center like UCLA Health or Cedars-Sinai, everything was systematic. From admission to treatment, there was zero delay. They utilized a video remote interpreter service to ensure clear communication. EKGs, blood tests, and X-rays were completed in under an hour. Fortunately, the results showed it was temporary arrhythmia caused by fatigue, not a heart attack. The doctor advised an overnight observation just to be safe. However, Mrs. Moni Sarath was worried she would miss the wedding. The doctor proposed a solution. He would digitally transmit her records to a hospital in Toronto and clear her for travel with specific medication. At the pharmacy, the diligence was moving. The pharmacist double-checked for interactions with the medication she brought from Cambodia and even printed out instructions in large font. When it came time to pay, we braced ourselves. We expected the cost to be astronomical, many times their monthly income. However, the hospital social worker explained that a humanitarian fund covered part of the emergency care for indigent travelers and the rest was handled by the travel insurance we had purchased. We weren't charged an unreasonable amount. Leaving the hospital, Mrs. Chandara said, "People who live in a country with such medical care are truly blessed." Mr. Piseth added, "In our village, without money, you cannot get treatment. But here, they treated us, foreigners, like their own citizens." In the afternoon, we explored the city. They were amazed by the clean zones in areas like the Grove or Santa Monica. Seeing streets free of litter, they asked, "Did the cleaners just sweep here?" When I explained that it's partly a culture of not littering in these public spaces, they nodded deeply. We stopped at a massive 24-hour supercenter, like a Walmart. To the teachers, this place was magic. They were stunned that one store had everything: groceries, clothes, a pharmacy, a vision center, and even a bank. Mr. Soffel said emotionally, "This one shop has more than our entire market. It is so convenient." The employees were fantastic. Seeing a group of confused elderly foreigners, they didn't look annoyed. Instead, a greeter smiled and helped point us to the right aisle. That evening, we experienced a classic American dinner at a barbecue smokehouse. It was their first time trying American soul food. The meat was so tender it fell off the bone, perfect for the elderly teachers. The owner, seeing their delight, came over and tried to chat using gestures and simple words. Enjoy. Welcome to America. The warmth was universal. Day 3 was for culture. We visited the Griffith Observatory. The teachers were moved by the view of the city and the stars, but also by the public accessibility of such a grand monument. Science belongs to everyone here, Mr. Pyseth noted. Later, we visited a historic church downtown to pay our respects. Mr. Pyseth said, "Even though we are Buddhist, I feel the depth of faith here. This place is preserved beautifully because people cherish it." In the afternoon, we had the privilege of visiting a local elementary school that focuses on cultural exchange. The principal welcomed us. The cleanliness of the classrooms, the abundance of books, and the diversity of the students deeply touched the retired teachers. Watching a class, Mrs. Chandara wept. Our village school doesn't even have enough desks. But these children learn in such a rich environment. As a teacher, I am envious, but also happy for them. During the interaction time, the teachers taught the American kids a Khmer greeting, and the kids taught them English slang. Although they didn't speak the same language, their hearts connected. When the children gave them handmade welcome cards, the teachers held them against their chests like treasures. On the morning of the 4th day, it was finally time to leave for Canada. On the shuttle to LAX, the teachers shared their thoughts. Mr. Pyseth said, "These 4 days have changed our lives. We learned about American kindness, the excellence of their social systems, and most importantly, the heart that values every individual." Mr. Chia Sapik added, "We must convey this to the children in the village." The final touching moment happened at the airport gate. A TSA officer who had seen us earlier came over to say goodbye. "I know it was a short stay, but did you enjoy the USA?" With tears in their eyes, the teachers answered. Mrs. Moni Sarath said, "We are 78 years old, nearing the end of our lives. But at this age, we learned there is such a beautiful country. God guided us here." As the plane took off, looking down at the receding California coastline, the teachers kept waving. They didn't know who they were waving to, but their hearts were full of gratitude toward America and its people. After attending the wedding in Canada, the teachers returned to Cambodia as planned. But what happened next was something no one expected. When they arrived at Phnom Penh Airport, local media was waiting. They wanted to interview these rural teachers about their accidental trip to America. The teachers spoke honestly about their experience. Mr. Pyseth's statement was broadcast nationwide. America was completely different from what we imagined. It wasn't just technologically advanced. The human heart there is beautiful. The next day, a major Cambodian newspaper ran a front-page story titled, "The Rural Teacher's American Discovery." The article detailed their experience and posed the question, what is true wealth? The reaction was overwhelming. The Ministry of Education contacted us, asking to share the teachers' experience with educators nationwide. A week later, at an education conference in Phnom Penh, Mr. Pyseth gave a special speech. He said, "We always thought wealth meant having money, but the wealth we saw in America was different. It was the heart of empathy. It was a social system that protects the weak. It was the ADA ramps for wheelchairs. It was the respect for others. That is true wealth." Young teachers listening to the speech were moved to tears. They asked, "How can we create a society like that? Can we do it?" The teachers answered, "First, we adults must change. We must teach children to have a heart of empathy. That is the first step." After the speech aired on TV, reactions poured in from all over the country. But the biggest change happened in the village of Prazit. Upon returning, the teachers told the village youth about their experience, sparking a desire for change. They started with a cleaning campaign, aiming for the clean streets they saw in the U.S. Villagers began picking up trash every morning. Next came care for the elderly. Inspired by the accessibility they saw in America, they built benches in the village gathering spots and constructed wooden ramps so wheelchairs could move easily, a village version of the ADA. The school changed too. A village carpenter, moved by the teachers' stories, repaired the classrooms for free. Villagers working in the city donated money to buy new desks and chairs. 6 months later, when I visited the village again, I saw an amazing transformation. The village roads were paved. Street lights were installed. A small library was built in the school, and children were reading intently. Mr. Piseth told me, "Jimmy, we are practicing what we learned in America. It's not perfect yet, but the hearts of the people have changed. Everyone is working together to create a better village." Most moving of all, the village created a charter of empathy, which includes respecting the elderly, protecting children, helping those in need, and caring for the environment. 1 year later, Prazit was officially recognized by the government as a model village. Mr. Piseth is now 79 and still healthy. He is planning another overseas trip, this time to attend his great-grandson's graduation. He plans to transit through the US again, saying he wants to see his American friends. I now lead several Cambodian groups to the US every year. Many of them are people who became interested in America after hearing the teacher's story. They all return home with deep impressions, just like the teachers. A 48-hour experience by 78-year-old rural teachers who had never left their country changed a village and influenced a nation. The American people didn't do anything extraordinary. They were just kind as usual. Their systems just worked as usual. Yet, for people from a different background, that usual was a life-changing miracle. To everyone listening today, you might have foreign friends around you who feel the same way. Things you take for granted might actually be unique and precious on a global scale. What the Cambodian rural teachers taught us is that true international friendship isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing the empathy that we should all have as human beings. That brings us to the end of today's story. What did you think of the 48-hour American journey that changed the lives of 12 retired Cambodian teachers? Please leave a comment of encouragement for the protagonists of our story. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe.